So it is official, the lockout is here, and players are revolting, or I don't know if I should say revolting. They are trolling Major League Baseball because a side effect of the lockout is the fact that MajorLeagueBaseball.com, MLB.com, cannot use the likeness of current players. So there's just a bunch of random empty profile pictures, so now players are using that same profile picture on their Twitter. This doesn't even feel like real life anymore. I also found it funny that MLB.com removed all player likeness, but they're still selling $400 jerseys of player likeness. Okay.
Is this real life?
But anyways, what's going on, everyone? It's Fuzzy. Welcome back to yet another MLB recap. Real quick, we are going to talk about Marcus Stroman and the Hunter Renfroe trade tomorrow because I need to dedicate an entire video to what happened over the last 24 hours. The fact that baseball does not exist right now. No, we're not talking about the YouTube channel. At the current time of this recording, Robert Manfred, Major League Baseball, and the Players Association were unable to strike a deal, so a lockout has officially ensued. So yesterday, of course, like we mentioned, it was the last day for MLB officials to meet with the Players Association and strike a deal. And after 7 minutes, not 7 hours of, intense deliberation, after 7 minutes, they left the hotel and that was it. For the first time in 26 years, a lockout will be in place in Major League Baseball, which means that a freeze on trades and signings for all Major League players, no communications between teams and players are allowed if they're on the Major League roster, and there are no winter meetings. So essentially, it's a work stoppage. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show a clip from Robbie, Mr. Manfred, as to why lockouts are needed. In short, he's basically saying it forces one party to be more realistic and make decisions faster. That's really what he's saying.
Look, it's part of the theory that underlies the National Labor Relations Act, right? People need pressure sometimes to get to an agreement. Candidly, we didn't feel that sense of pressure from the other side during the course of this week. And, the only tool available to you under the act is to apply economic leverage.
He also forgot to mention that, again, apparently MLB.com cannot use the likeness of players, so in a few weeks there will be a jersey signing or something like that with adult third baseman, not Nolan Arenado. They can't even say his name. I thought this was kind of funny, but I mean, this makes me think of MLB The Show. Are we going to have a bunch of Reggie Stalkers or Pepe Alazar in MLB The Show 21? I don't know if that's going to be the case. Also, real quick before we read the letter from Robert Manfred as well as the response from the Players Association, this is what Major League Baseball would look like right now if no deal was done and there was just a bunch of random profile pictures instead of players.
And that's why he gets drilled here and he slams the bat. Now he's making a move and here he comes.
Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and read the letter from yours truly, Robert Manfred. To our fans, I first want to thank you for your continued support of the great game of baseball. This past season, we were reminded of how the national pastime can bring us together and restore hope despite the difficult challenge of a global pandemic. As we begin to emerge from one of the darkest periods in our history, our ballparks were filled with fans, the games were filled with the excitement, and millions of families felt the joy of watching baseball together as there's a drive in a deep left field by Castellanos, and that'll be a home run, and so that'll make it a 4-0 ball game. Okay, that was actually Foolish Baseball's troll version. Let me read the actual one. That is why I am so disappointed about the situation in which our game finds itself today. Despite the league's best efforts to make a deal with the Players Association, we were unable to extend our 26-year-long history of labor peace and come to an agreement with the MLBPA before the current CBA expired. Therefore, we have forced to commence a lockout of Major League players effective pretty much immediately. Now, just for reference, a lockout is not required. The owners and Robert Manfred decided to do this, so they're basically smacking the players on the wrist and now saying, you can't sign with any new teams, haha. So this is going to go for a long time. I'm expecting into January. He continues, I want to explain to you how we got here and why we have to take this action today. Simply put, we believe that an off-season lockout is the best mechanism to protect the 2022 season. We hope that the lockout will jumpstart the negotiations and get us to an agreement agreement that will allow the season to start on time. This defensive lockout was necessary because the PA's vision for Major League Baseball would threaten the ability of most teams to be competitive. We'll talk about that in just a second. It's simply not a viable option. From the beginning, the MLB PA has been unwilling to move from their starting position, compromise, or collaborate on solutions. They are blaming the players, or he, I should say, Robert Manfred. This is him talking in first person. We began negotiations over a new agreement. The Players Association already had a contract that they wouldn't trade for any other in sports. Baseball players have no salary cap and are not subjected to a maximum length of dollar amount on contracts. In fact, only MLB has guaranteed contracts that run 10 or more years and in excess of $300 million. We have not proposed anything that would change these fundamentals. While we have heard repeatedly that free agency is broken, in the month of November, $1.7 billion was committed to free agents, smashing the previous record by nearly 4x. By the end of the offseason, clubs will have committed more money to players than in any offseason in MLB history. This is a complete lie in my opinion. This is a fallacy. This was a, combined effort from all of the owners to stick it in the face that, haha, we signed all of these guys before the CBA. That's the only reason why they signed. They wanted to make sure they had their family set in place before the lockout ensued, because who knows if there's going to be a 2022 season. Not the fact that free agency was magically fixed and 4x money was spent. Come on, Robert Manfred, we're all smarter than that.
What about the union's proposals was bad for the sport, bad for fans, and bad for competitive balance?
Let's take 5-year free agency. I think that we already have teams in smaller markets that struggle to compete. Shortening the period of time that they control players makes it even harder for them to compete. It's also bad for fans in those markets. The most negative reaction we have is when a player leaves via free agency. We don't see that making it available earlier. We don't see that as a positive. Taking $100 million away from teams that are already struggling to put a competitive product on the field, I don't see how that's helpful.
What?
We worked hard to find compromise while making the system even better for players by addressing concerns raised by the PA. We offered to establish a minimum payroll for all clubs to meet for the first time in baseball history. I'm cool with that, a salary floor, to allow the majority of players to reach free agency earlier through an age-based system that would eliminate any claims of service time manipulation, and to increase compensation for all young players, including increases in the minimum salary. When negotiations lacked momentum, we tried to create some by offering to accept the universal DH, to create a new draft season using a lottery similar to other leagues, and increase the competitive balance tax threshold that affects only a small number of teams. We have had challenges before with respect to making labor agreements and have overcome the challenges every single time during my tenure, except for this time. Regrettably, it appears the PA came to the bargaining table with a strategy of confrontation over compromise. God, this guy is gaslighting the crap out of us. They never wavered from collectively the most extreme set of proposals in their history, including significant cuts to the revenue sharing system, a weakening of the competitive balance tax, and shortening the period of time that players play for their teams. All of these changes would make our game less competitive, not more. To be clear, this hard but important step does not necessarily mean games will be canceled. In fact, we are taking this step now because it accelerates the urgency for an agreement with as much runway as possible to avoid doing damage to the 2022 season. Delaying this process further would only put spring training opening day, let me just say the release of MLB The Show 22, and the rest of the season further at risk. And we cannot allow an expired agreement to gain an in-season strike and a missed World Series like we experienced in '94. We all owe you, our fans, better than that. Today is a difficult day for baseball, but as I've said all year, there is a path to a fair agreement, and we will find it. I do not doubt the league and the players share a fundamental appreciation for this game and a commitment to its fans. I remain optimistic that both sides, blah, 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 blah. He essentially is saying, hey, we're gonna get this done. Well, yeah, if you do what the players say, come on, man. So in a nutshell, that is what Robert Manfred had to say, and here's the response from the MLB Players Association. So they said, MLB has announced a lockout of players, shutting down our industry. This shutdown is a dramatic measure regardless of the timing. It is not required by law or for any other reason. It was the owner's choice, plain and simple, specifically calculated to pressure players into relinquishing rights and benefits and abandoning good faith bargaining proposals that will benefit not just players but the game and industry as a whole. These tactics are not new. We have been here before, and players have risen to the occasion time and time again. Guided by a solidarity that has been forged over generations, we will do so again here. We remain determined to return to the field under the terms of a negotiated collective bargaining agreement that is fair to all parties and provide fans with the best version of the game we all love. So essentially, this is a game of cat and mouse. This is he said versus she said. Who's going to be right in the grand scheme of things? I mean, hopefully the players. So that pretty much does it for the lockout and explaining what is happening. Robert Manfred and Major League Baseball are trying to get things done, and the same goes for the MLB PA. So they both have arguments that need to be listened to, but because they couldn't agree upon anything, a lockout is now in place. Again, one side wants shorter free agency, and they want a more competitive balance in Major League Baseball. The fact that teams, they are choosing to be bad and tanking by not spending money, as opposed to they're not being forced to spend money, which is what Robert Manfred is trying to imply, is the fact that there's not a competitive balance issue. It's just the fact that some teams don't have enough money. And I should have prefaced this before the video started, but I have no ill will towards Robert Manfred. In fact, I think that he's a good father. I think that he's a genuinely nice man. Does he lack a little bit of compassion at times? Probably. That's why he called the World Series trophy a piece of metal. But in summation, I just want baseball back. I miss it more than anything. And I think the players right now have the upper advantage because, you know, everyone's on their side. The fans, the perspective, everything is swaying towards the players. And I really hope that the owners get their you-know-whats out of their you-know-whats. And that does it. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this ends soon because Chris Bryant, Carlos Correa, Freddie Freeman, Suzuki over from Japan, who knows if he's even going to want to come to, you know, American baseball after what this, it's just, oh God, this is bad.
I don't feel frustrated. I'm disappointed we didn't get to an agreement. That's different than being frustrated. I think we're in a process. I'm prepared to continue that process, and I'm optimistic that we're going to get a deal. Secondly, the whole relationship issue, you know, I think people put way too much emphasis on that issue. At the end of the day, it's about the substance. We're here, they're there, we need to find a way to bridge the gap.